we're going to talk about troubleshooting. I ran into this last week. I was trying to do something very simple. I'm trying to put a div class with the div with button blue with a link in it, and I kept getting this error. And I'm like, well, what is the error? I can't see the error. I can't see because it's cutting off 3 or 4 characters of the beginning. See how wide this column is? It should be about half that, and I should see the beginning caret of div, and I don't. So it's very, you know, it took me almost half an hour to troubleshoot this. I finally cut it and pasted it into a text editor so I could see what errant characters I had fat fingered into there and put it back. But then I was like, well, this is highly, highly annoying.
Becky, are you?
Yeah.
We're seeing something else.
You're not seeing, what are you seeing?
We're seeing welcome to diabetic investor.
Oh, I apologize. Let's move. Okay, I picked the wrong screen. I apologize. You should have said something earlier, guys. Come on. There we go.
I couldn't find how to unmute myself.
I was about to say something just now. Thanks.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, so
Yeah,
now
I was just trying to figure out how to chat, put it in chat. So
okay,
yeah.
so do you see what I'm talking about now? What screen are you seeing?
Now we're seeing your.
Yeah, now I think if you start over, we'll understand.
Okay, so now we're looking at the sidebar, and I wanted to do something very simple in a custom HTML widget. Does everyone see that? Say yes. Somebody wave at me. Okay, good. God, I hate this. But I couldn't do it, or I kept getting this error, and I couldn't figure out what the error is because the first 3 characters here are cut off. And I couldn't see what was going on. And it was very frustrating. And I finally just, like, as I mentioned, I cut and pasted it into a text editor. And then I saw that I had fat fingered an extra caret in there. But it wasn't until I did that. And I finally fixed this. And this is how I fixed it. But it was so annoying. I was like, okay, now I need to figure out why this happened. This is clearly a CSS conflict someplace. But you know, the HTML block is part of core. Where is this coming from? And I had no way of knowing. So I did something that I have done before that everyone can do. I installed this. Everyone now has Site Health as part of core install. This is a complementary plugin developed by .org to enhance and help with troubleshooting from the Site Health. But it's not very clear on how to use it. You know, you install it and you're like, oh, I can troubleshoot gravity forms. What does that do? You know, and it's like, it's still not very clear. And that's what we're going to go through tonight, is how to use this plugin nicely. So as you saw before, this is the front end of the site. It's a fairly straightforward blog. There is a lot of complicated membership stuff behind it, but presentationally, it's just a blog. So I've installed this plugin, and then I was like, do I troubleshoot here? Do I health check? I couldn't remember what to do. And so I called my friend Steve, who said, go to Site Health, then go to troubleshooting. Oh, this is the big turn on button here. So I've installed the plugin. I've now gone to Tools, Site Health, Troubleshooting, and I'm going to enable troubleshooting mode, which brings me back to the dashboard and tells me that I have all of these things turned off. And if I go back to the home page, oh my God, it's a disaster. I broke my site. So this is one of those things, you know, when you go on the forums and you say this isn't working, and a forum person writes back and say, did you turn off all the plugins and did you change the theme to 2020?
We'd never say that.
Yes, of course.
I just said that 5 times today, Steve.
It's the take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning solution. And it is painful to do, particularly on a production site, because you don't really want to turn off WooCommerce in the middle of a sale. You don't really want to turn off multilingual things or turn off your contact forms while you're messing around. So it's really hard to do. But what this plugin has done is it has totally broken my site. It has turned everything off and given me a theme that is clearly not working properly. But when I look at this site in a different browser, this is the same site in a different browser. I am not logged in. It is a different session. It looks fine. It behaves just like it should. Ooh, that's cool. So what this plugin does is that it turns everything off so that you can turn things back on one at a time, only in your logged in session. The rest of the world does not have to know that you just caused major gold PHP errors on the homepage. Only you have to know that. So this is cool. Everything is turned off. And if I go back to widgets and I refresh, and I don't have my error anymore, but I can see all of my characters. Right? So whatever was causing my 3 characters to bump under this line is no longer happening. So I know it's probably in a plugin, probably not in a theme, but probably in a plugin. How do I fix this? So if I go back, oh geez, sorry. So now I can go back to plugins and say, all right, I'm pretty sure, I guess it could be Classic Editor. Sure, let's find out. You know, I mean, I'm looking at these. What could possibly cause this kind of back-end CSS error? There's nothing that really stands out here. Classic error is a possibility. So let's go ahead and enable these. And go back to widgets. And everything still looks fine. Okay, so I'm going to go down the list. Right, let's try all these debug things that I don't really need, but I do need them occasionally. And let's go back to widgets. Look at that. So I've recreated the problem. Okay, I'm pretty suspect about these debug plugins. So let's disable these again. And then go back and do the rest of this. So that's interesting, health check and troubleshooting, Steve, looks like it's off, but it's not. Okay. So now I've got everything.
Actually, it is off. It's a separate plugin it installed it. It's an MU plugin.
No kidding.
Yeah, when you put in troubleshooting mode, it creates
copies itself over to MU. Oh, that's so.
Out of troubleshooting mode, it deletes the MU plugin.
That's so bizarre. Okay.
Darius is a sneaky
magic. Magic. It's all magic. Okay. So let's refresh again. And my widget is now behaving properly. I know it's in those debugs. I can go back and play with 1 or 2. And in fact, when we played with this, we figured out it was either this one or this one. If either one of them was on, I had my problem. The cron didn't really cause me problems. And as I mentioned, I don't actively need these plugins all the time, so keeping them disabled is fine by me. So that's how I solve that particular problem, but that's what this plugin can do, is that it can give you all of these tools to figure out what's going on, and then and then you can turn off or replace or contact the developer of the plugin that is giving you grief. And it can be really hard to figure that out. I once spent 3 months trying to chase down. I have a very complicated site that is in 4 different languages and has complicated search plugins added to it, et cetera, et cetera. And for 3 months, it was never showed up on the front end, but on the back end, the editors were seeing the same custom fields show up 4 times. And it was a little maddening. And it was finally turned out to be the extension of the search plugin that connects with the multi-language plugin had an error in it. And they finally fixed it 3 months later. So if I'd had this tool back then, or if I'd known better how to use it, maybe I would have found that a month earlier, but highly, highly frustrating. So Steve, take us through, what else do you want to look here, or do you want to show us your thing?
One thing I was going to mention is you can actually turn the plugins on and off from the admin bar, because it puts up a troubleshooting link there when it's in trouble.
Right, so if I troubleshoot just classic editor,
right,
then...
But the issue is you have so many plugins, turning them on and off one at a time is a giant pain. So when we were doing this, we came over to this page to do them. I said, do the first, turn off the first half and turn on the second half.
Exactly,
And,
exactly.
you know,
And
so
this site doesn't really have that many plugins. I've only got 15 on this site. I've got sites with 30 and 50, you know, so it really makes a difference.
It cuts it down by 2 to the n or whatever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Log n or something weird like that. I know it's been a long time since
Right,
I didn't know
right,
that.
right. And then I would like to spend a few minutes just looking at site health, because this has caused me grief over the years. Yes, I'm on a local dev and I know my PHP requires an update. I know I'm in trouble here. And you know, I've just deactivated 3 plugins, so that's okay. What does it say I'm missing? Image Magic, yeah. There are some of these, and then what's the one that we fought with, Steve? The Cron Loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, your site cannot do an HTTP callback,
Yeah.
and it's not an error. It's not a critical issue that you need to worry about, but it's frustrating that it's still there. Yes.
There's another update coming soon that should be better at this.
Okay.
One thing that some people have found is that merely installing and activating this plugin has fixed problems, but that's simply because it turns off script concatenation on the back end. When in the normal circumstance, WordPress tries to squish all the scripts into as few loads as possible. So it combines a whole bunch of JavaScript and a whole bunch of CSS. And in WordPress 5.5, some scripts were loaded in the wrong order.
Oh, is that what happened?
So we would tell people install the Jquery Migrate helper or install this plugin to help us figure out what's going on, and they'd say it works. And that has been fixed in 5.5.1.
Right, which just came out. Right, right.
Yeah.
So
There are a number of like really hardcore screw up themes, plugins, issues in 5.5. 5.5.1 came out yesterday, and you should absolutely update to that because global JavaScript variables, objects were not being recognized. It was a mess.
right, and this is another reason why I do not update right away. Most of my sites are still on 5.4. I'm going to go through a big round of updates next week, but I'm glad I waited.
Talking about that, maybe we should talk a little bit about the Jquery Migrate helper plugin.
Okay. You wanted me to stop sharing and you can?
Well, I don't have a demo of that one.
Okay. Okay.
At this point, there are no plugins left, no major plugins left that are improved by installing Jquery Migrate helper.
Okay.
There are some old themes. So if you don't know, Jquery Migrate helper is a shim that takes old, obsolete Jquery code and lets it run in the version of Jquery that WordPress ships, which is only 3 versions or 4 or 5 or a year and a half behind the actual version of jQuery. But it's all the security patches are backported. So it's a secure but not current version of jQuery. In 5.5.6, the jQuery Migrate helper goes away. A new version of jQuery Migrate will be loaded by default. And then in 5.5.7, they start moving forward on, unless Matt changes his mind again, and he's changed his mind twice in the last 2 months. 5.5.7, new versions of jQuery start coming out until I think it's 5.5.8. Both the jQuery will be the current version of jQuery, and a new version of jQuery Migrate helper will be out that will take old versions of stuff and make it work with the current version of jQuery.
Well, that was enough to make my head turn into mud.
Yes. Yes. And as I said, it's all, you know, cast solidly in oatmeal at this point.
Gotcha.
Well, let's take a look at what they've done with PHP. They're extending, you know, PHP compatibility at a minimum 5 years. It's probably going to be 7 to 9 years.
Right.
So, yeah, and I'll say it. The jQuery crap fest will continue for a while, because no one's got the gumption to actually draw a line in the sand on the tech, even though PHP 7 is already 2 years plus old.
The core team did draw a line in the sand, and then Matt came and erased it.
Well, yes.
Okay.
You're absolutely correct,
Okay.
Steve. Yes.
All right.
So the all-woman development team got overridden by some guy, actually.
Jesus. All right. Before this descends, Steve, I want you to take over the screen and show us your demo, because we have another demo of this same plugin, or no, a different demo,
Okay. So
we'll figure it out.
So let me share. Where'd it go?
Some appeared.
Okay. Share. Alrighty.
No. Yes, this. Have you turned it off and on again? We can't hear it, hon.
Turning it off and on again.
Hello, IT. Something's wrong with my computer. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Okay. Enough of that. But that's essentially, whoops. That's essentially what we're doing in the forums. Turn it off and turn it back on again. So when we were lucky on Becky's problem, simply turning off one plugin said, oh, look, now it works. So it's one of these plugins, and we didn't have to get in it. But quite often people come into the forums with the white screen of death. Or what we see is now WordPress says, you've encountered a critical error. We sent you an email about it. If you get the email, then generally there's some log dump in it. The problem is not everyone gets the email. It looks like spam, and it really depends where in the stack of WordPress loading your site crashes, because maybe it crashes before that email can get sent.
And even if you get the email, you can't always tell what the problem is.
Yep. So the 3 basic ways of debugging this, and that's to use WordPress built-in debugging tools, and then do the turn it off and turn it back on again. In the olden days, before Health Check, we would just say, turn off all your plugins and switch the theme. And people would say, well, won't that wreck my site? And my response was always, that's why God invented 3 a.m. Which didn't make people really happy, but, you know, when you are in IT and when you are the guy running or the person running a website, you're in IT, and when I used to have this giant mini computer system and people all across the country, Christmas Day was one of my favorite days because I could come in the morning and do things like turn off parts of the computer, bring stuff down because no one was going to call me. So the nice thing about Health Check is it does disable all the plugins and switches you to the most recent 20-something theme that's on your system. If you don't have a 20-something theme, it yells at you and tells you you need to have a fallback theme. And then you deal with the people who say, well, you're bloating my system. Yeah, great. So I've got this page has the short code on it, and I'm not sure. Oh, and the short code I think is disabled. So let's first go to dashboard and turn on the plugin. Plugins. Yep. All right. So now that's
Plugin demo.
just stuff. So now we have stuff there. Okay. If I go and I break that plugin, by, for example, calling a function that doesn't exist, my back end should be fine, but that page, I got an empty page. What do I do? Oh my God. And this is where we say you go into debugging mode. There are 3 debugging, actually there's 4 or 5 debugging constants. But for generally the people we're talking to, it's WP debug, WP debug display, and WP debug log. So I'm going to turn those guys on and turn off that one. Okay, so now debugging is enabled. It's going to, debugging is on, WP debug display is going to show it on the screen, and WP debug log, if this were working right and there's something wrong with my local setup, we'll log it to a file called debug.log in WP content. And now, when I refresh that page, I can see I have a call to an undefined function, bad function call. It tells me where it is at line 15. And then, so then the solution to tell people is if you can log into your site, if you can get into the back end, deactivate that plugin. And it's back. And the shortcodes are not getting rendered because the plugin doesn't exist. So let's turn that plugin back on. And we're going to install Health Check. Add new. Yeah, okay. Health Check should show up. There it is. It is a featured plugin. And people freak out because it has not been tested with your current version of WordPress.
Right, and also there is another plugin that has a very similar name that is not by WordPress.org. So just pay attention.
Yeah. The key thing is it'll tell you it is by the WordPress.org community. And so I'm going to install it. Whoops. Install it. I can't activate it because it's sitting under the window with all the people's pictures. Hang on a second. Okay, it's activated. And now I'm going to put the site into troubleshooting mode. Tools, site health. Let's try that again. Tools, Site health. And come on, damn it. Troubleshooting mode. All right. Enable troubleshooting. Now when I come over here, well, that's interesting.
Looks like my homepage.
Didn't do that the other day. We didn't do that yesterday when I was testing this. This is new for 5.5.1, I think. All righty.
What were you expecting?
I was expecting to see the normal debugging page, but it has something to do with the 2020 theme. Is there an update to the theme?
Yes, there was.
Yep. Appearance.
I mean, there was with 5.5 anyway.
Oh, says it's up to date. Well, all right, the hell with that. Let's go to themes. Oh, let's turn 2020 on. All right. Let's see what happens here. Oh, let's switch to 2019. Does that make life better?
Nope.
Nope. Well, isn't that charming? So much for that.
Isn't WP debug still on?
Yes, it is. So let's go look at let's go look at that. Thank you. Let's see if we got anything in the debug log. Nope, there's something wrong with my local host setup. I think it's an SE Linux issue that I haven't bothered to track all the way through.
That's a different plugin, right, Steve?
That's Linux. This is my version of WordPress that should have nothing installed on it, so I can test a clean version.
So if you turn debug off.
Yes. So let's turn debug off and see if that. Let's see if it has to do with WP debug or if it's just troubleshooting mode not working right. This is the fun of all this stuff. Okay.
See, that's why I had you do this part.
All right. Aha, look at that. So are we in troubleshooting mode still? I don't think so. Boy, if I can do this, I can bug someone about it. So, okay, so it's totally dead. We'll enable that plugin demo. We'll enable Gutenberg and see what happens. And forget it. This worked with 5.5. I swear it did.
But with 5.5.1, it doesn't.
All right, so.
Live demos, gotta love them.
I'm just wondering now. No, all right. Disable troubleshooting mode, do that. Fix the plugin again. All right, well, so much for my part of this.
Does anyone have any questions on using this tool or what they're looking at in status and info and whatever in the site health page? This is a good time. Am I supposed to read? This is where I fail here, guys. I want you to raise hands and ask questions, not I guess I should be reading the chat here. Okay, so no questions? Seriously? You can even turn off your microphones. I'll listen to your kids.
So
well,
debugging is, I think the key thing, my background is a research scientist. I have formal training in how to do that stuff. And the key to troubleshooting is to sit there and make a set of hypotheses about what could go wrong or what has gone wrong. Troubleshooting mode helps you do that in the same way that enabling debug, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. So the key is to make a set of hypotheses and then rank them two ways. One is by order of how hard it is to test each hypothesis.
Always a problem.
By likelihood of that hypothesis being the case. The hardest ones to test are interactions among multiple plugins. Like when you're talking, Becky, about WPML and some other plugin. Each one worked fine, but when they were both on together.
Yeah. And WPML has done that to me a couple of times, but it almost always has been outside plugins interacting with WPML that got something a little off, so it can be very frustrating.
So your key in troubleshooting is to try to work towards looking for stuff you think you can fix, figuring out what might be fixed. And then sometimes it comes down to, you get people say, well, it's my theme and it's no longer supported. To which the answer is learn how to code a theme and fix it or find another theme.
Mm-hmm.
And people will say, well, I'll just go back to WordPress 4.9.
No. You'll get hacked.
You can do that, and given that WordPress, all security patches are patched all the way back to WordPress 3.7, you can do that, but shit ain't gonna work. Because things like WooCommerce requires, I think they're now at 4.9,
mm-hmm.
and they're talking about going to 5. And they're talking about PHP 7.2 or 7.3.
Yeah, they're the early screechers on all of those specs. They're always making me crazy. And yeah, it's not my imagination. PHP's gone nuts these last few years too. It's hard to keep up with all the updates that you need to have. It can be frustrating. That's why we make money, right?
Yes, and thus money is made.
And thus money is made. Yes.
So any other issues about debugging to talk about, or troubleshooting, or weird things you've found?
Yeah.
You're
I have
muted.
a question.
Yeah.
I have a site that I help maintain, and it's absolutely enormous. When I inherited it, it was a huge, I don't know, it's like 9 gig or something.
Oh my God.
So when I download it and then I make I copy it, I don't put up all the media, and then I update, a plugin at a time on each one, and staging and production. Is that good enough? Is there other recommendations that if I were to, I don't know, I don't feel like I'm using my time very smartly by doing it that way.
I think there's, if you're not using like a staging site that's on the same host in exactly the same environment.
Okay.
And is it the best you could do? No. Is it better than just saying, well, screw it, I've got a backup. If I bring the site down, I can restore.
Right.
Because, as I said, I've got an issue that I'm pretty sure is an SE Linux issue, which doesn't exist on most hosts because they figured that out. But I'm running this on my desktop.
Right.
This particular site.
Right.
And
So,
my desktop is as configured as I feel like before I get too tired or frustrated.
China, the server that this giant site is on, is there room to create a staging copy in that environment?
It's easier for me to pull it down and do it on my own host, but you're right.
Mm-hmm.
You're making a good point that that's not really apples to apples.
Right. I keep staging copies of all of my big production sites. Yes, they take up just as much room, if not more, sometimes, than the other. If you have the room on the server, and at 9 gigs, I would really find out what your hosting is like, because that could really hurt you. but I always keep, you know, I do it in a subdirectory called staging. You know, I just create a whole nother copy install, and then every year or every 6 months or when it's needed, I go back and I replace it, because of course a year later it's not up to date with the current site as far as content, and maybe we redesigned a page or whatever. But the staging environment is also very important for when the client says, oh, I want to rearrange how the store looks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's go rearrange it over here before we inflict our pain on the public and we haven't made up our mind yet, you know. So if you have the ability to create a subdirectory or even a subdomain and put a second install that you can then go in and do all these updates on, but your thing of updating it one at a time and checking, I still do that.
Yeah, okay.
It is what it is. There are tools out there, WP Manage and other things, that will take a site and just, you know, oh, updates here, and just start doing it for you, or do it on a schedule or whatever. And maybe for a smaller site, you know, a small blog or a, you know, a small greeting card site, you know what I mean? That's probably fine. And that's a way a lot of people can manage 30 to 50 sites a month, you know, as they do it, something like that. But for big sites with lots of plugins and 9 gigs of media, that just doesn't work. You got to take it slow and careful, and you got to check.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I had to upgrade to PHP 7.3, and I was on 7.0, and I was really worried about things not happening. I actually I have a complete server for this one client, and I just opened up a whole new section under a different domain, so that I could copy those sites again and test that PHP update before I went back, because PHP update is the whole server, say staging sites too, you know. So I needed it on a different domain so I could segment it and do it that way. Yeah, maintenance is...
There's some post-update steps also that should be automated that aren't, like in WooCommerce, where
oh, you need to update your database now, and you have to still go click something. Yes, exactly.
Yoast SEO, which decided to move stuff out of WP posts into their own tables. But and it doesn't, you don't have to, but if you don't, it keeps doing it the old way and will run very slowly.
Okay.
And now we have auto updates that people are going to start enabling all over the place. It is good for the people who
is that here? Is it here now?
Yeah,
we have that.
Yeah, it was in 5.5. Unless you have auto updates turned off as a config.
Oh, well, this is my local. I don't know what I've got here, so okay.
I can bring one up here.
I asked a question in the chat about an interesting experience I just had with my staging server, staging site.
You set up a staging site and change the theme to the latest 20 to test, and then it tells you fatal error when you go back to your child theme. Did this actually happen, Nina?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
No, I didn't just make it up as
no. This is just like a worst nightmare kind of scenario.
It would be really nice if you were to write that up and put it as a support topic on Health Check, because Marius knows that there are some conditions where that happens, and he's trying to.
So was it a child theme of a 20s theme?
It was a child theme of Astra.
Okay.
And it had a different issue that I was working with the plugin developer on. And when I went to put we solved that issue, I went to put it back to my child, and it was, I got this, I don't remember the exact note, but it was something like, a terrible thing has happened.
That's the critical error. That's the critical error thing. And then you go into debugging mode.
Right. I did not do that. My thought was to shut down the staging server, and create a brand new, or staging site, create a brand new staging site and see if the same thing happened again.
And did it?
No, I haven't done that yet.
Oh, that's a lot of work. So yeah, so I think Steve's right. Enable the debugging and see what kind of error messages you're getting, and maybe that will help.
There are also some issues with things like Memcache run. If the server's running Memcache, there may be old PHP code that is still sitting in the cache. And, you know, independent of any WordPress caching plugins, that it's entirely possible if there's just some bad code sitting out there now, or something got corrupt in that cache.
So, I mean, what would you do if it was you?
Well, I think Steve's right. If you can if you can still get to your WP config file and turn on debug, debug true, and then go back and see what kind of error messages you're getting, maybe that helps you track down to the one plugin that it still might be, or if it's telling you this is a theme problem, then I would probably do what you were planning on doing, and that's rebuilding the staging site.
How recently was this, by the way?
The testing was a couple of months ago, and the funky message was a few days ago.
Because Astra is a very, very popular theme. So we see a lot, if something in a theme is going to break based on a WordPress update, Astra, Divi, Genesis are all going to break it. And the advantage of Astra is most people load it from WordPress.org, so we support it. And there was a whole bunch of stuff going on with Astra. And I know they released a couple updates over a couple of days. So something was marginal, but didn't break every Astra site because there's, hundreds of thousands of them. But that's the wonder of it. It works for me, and I always feel terrible when I type that as a response to someone's help thing is, well, it works for me, which is
because our environments are always so different. Yeah. So can you
hit you with my car? Maybe I should back up and see how you're doing.
Right. So Nina, does the theme have an update available? Can you do that, or?
Let me see. I actually.
And then that's a good way to get nailed in your child theme if they change something.
Mm-hmm.
That happens to impact your child theme.
Right.
Yeah, the child theme is not, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on.
Astra was last updated on August 13th, so it's pretty stable, I guess. It has over 1 million installations.
So should she put this up on the forum for Mario to look at?
Yeah.
What forum is this?
In the support tickets area for Health Check.
No, I don't have Health Check installed.
Okay, then never mind.
But you.
I wouldn't bother.
Okay.
We just do something nasty with it because that's what we moderators do.
Yeah, I've heard about you moderators.
We're making significant changes. There was a huge discussion today. We're going to let people delete their own topics now.
Interesting.
There's a whole bunch of people who post a question, they get an answer, and they say, I want it removed. Why? Because when you Google me, it shows up that I asked a question, which comes down to essentially, I had a problem, I didn't know the answer, and I asked someone for help, and no one will ever hire me again.
It shows you know how to use resources.
Right.
Always
but then you'll never help anybody else if you delete the question, right?
My position is always when I hire someone, it's far more important to me that they know how to find an answer.
Right.
Create another account and then type it or post it.
Okay, you were asking Becky about, when in 5.5 and above on the plugin page.
There we go.
Enable auto updates.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not going to do that. You know what? I may on some, but I won't on everyone. That's for sure. That's just too scary for me.
No, I went in the WP config file and disabled it completely.
So if you do enable auto updates, do you have any idea when you go back into that plugin page when it last updated and that's what's causing my grief?
It sends you an email.
Yeah.
Get an email.
Oh God, I'm definitely not going to do it. That's all I need, 50 emails every week.
Well, because of massive complaining, there's now a filter, or there's going to be a filter. I forget if it was 551 or it's going to be in 552 that lets you disable the emails or send you only an email on failure.
That's only a failure of the update, not a failure of the plugin not working.
Right.
Because it updated.
On the other hand, you know, there's a significant number of people who never update anything. And this is a step towards changing how core updates.
Some of the emails go to updates, to the updates tab in Gmail. Some of them go to promotions and some of them go to primary.
Yeah, I turned all that shit off at Gmail. It goes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Well, there's a lot of changes coming from the sounds of it.
Yeah.
It's just hard to keep
part
up
of
with
it is
it.
because there's a lot of people who just never update anything. They don't know, or they see that there's an update and it freaks them out, so they never go to WP admin again. Or they put black tape over those parts of their screen until they get to new post.
Well, and a lot of people are afraid to even log into their own admin.
Right now, you know, and this is partly was doable because there is stuff built into WordPress that lets the plugins team push security updates, even if you don't enable automatic updates. If something really, really, really bad is out there, they'll just push out an update.
Well, that's for core, and that's like you said,
No,
they
that's
support.
for plugins too.
Oh, for plugins too. Oh.
Wow. Mika can push an update, and Otto can push an update.
Aha.
Does it do that only if it's really, really serious?
Yes. Basically, yeah. You've dealt with Otto enough on the forums, or in Slack.
Yes, I have.
Otto doesn't want to be bothered.
Yeah, I could understand that.
Yeah, it cuts into
Interesting. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I feel like wrapping it up, guys.